Hello and welcome to another Nordic Takedown podcast episode number unknown because I didn't check.
37, I'm pretty sure.
37 is I was gonna say guest, but co-host here today, Viktor says 37, so we're going for that. With me, I also have someone that doesn't lack friends.
Good to be back.
Yeah, 3 weeks of absence. Yeah.
I had a really nasty throat inflammation. I don't know how to say it. For the Swedes, halsfluss, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's nasty. Yeah, it's not fun.
So I actually last week did not have a voice. So I wanted to join but couldn't.
Yeah, which is okay. We managed, apparently.
Well, barely. Barely scraping by.
Barely scraping by, indeed. So today we're going to talk mostly about 2 points. We're going to talk a little about the Boba suspension. Yes. And then we're going to talk about some deck building, theory crafting, and how different ways of deck building, basically. We're not just going to talk about one deck and say, well, that's cool, but we might also go into some decks that we think are cool.
Yeah. And how amazing it is to deck build right now. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, sure. No, it is. I think everyone thinks it's a little bit more fun now because it's more unknown. A lot of unknown quantities at the moment.
That's cool.
So before we go into that, since you've been gone, Jonah, 3 weeks, have you been doing any playing, any crafting? What have you been up to Star Wars wise?
I think deck building is a nice topic to come back to because my Star Wars Unlimited database account is full with lists. I just love picking a leader, picking a color, picking cards, and just thinking about it, just making decks, and then of course also testing them. I've been having a lot of fun with that. Sadly, haven't been able to go to any events, but I have ordered a box, so I'm gonna gather some friends here, and maybe we'll do a sealed.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. And that's your own pre-release.
Yes.
Post-release, I suppose.
Yeah.
Trondheim post-release. Let's go. How about you, Viktor?
Well, like I said in last episode, I had 2 remaining pre-releases to go to. So I went to our own here in Uppsala at Prisfyndet this last Wednesday. And it was really nice. A best of 1, 8 players. It was nice. I didn't open much bombs, and I built a pretty meh deck and went 1 and 2. So
you don't really want to dive into that too much. Which leader did you choose?
What did I end up with? Some crap. It wasn't really good.
That was not worth mentioning. Okay.
No. And then I went to Dragon Slayer. A lot of players there, really nice. I think we were a full 32.
Nice.
And we're at least upwards 30. So I got a late spot. It was sold out, but I got a cancelled spot. So I came in, was really, because I got to know it just before I left for work. So I didn't bring anything to work, so I had to rush down. It was on a Friday night, so it was really hard to make the time. I was a little bit late for registration, but I texted the guys so they knew, and I was a bit, I don't know, stressed out. So I didn't perform particularly well. I built a Django deck with basically no top end at all. Just didn't even see any Platoon.
Yeah.
Platoon. I just had meh cheap units. So I had usually good starts, and then I fizzle out at turn 3, 4. It was pretty sad thing.
Open anything good at that point?
Not really. I've had so much luck opening legendaries throughout the pre-releases, so I think I was due to have a couple of fizzles this way.
Yeah. Actually, I remembered I have played some physical cards too, and that's been teaching a friend of mine the game.
Oh,
That's been really fun. He's been playing Magic for a long time, and he'd heard that I had gotten into the game, and just I had some seal decks and the starters, so it was a really nice time.
Yeah,
What did you think?
The missionary work here is really important. You know?
It is.
Yeah.
He enjoyed it. He picked up on it really quickly. Like the first game we played, he actually beat me.
Ooh.
And I played my best, except for I resourced some bombs because I knew I had some bombs in the deck that would just win me the game. So I did some cheeky resourcing to nerf myself a bit, because that's a nice way to, when you're teaching new players, because you can still try to play optimally, show your opponent how you would play optimally, but you can just resource some of the good cards. So you're giving your opponent a chance, even though it's their first time.
That's a really easy way to sort of give a handicap without necessarily doing too much work.
Yeah. I was actually playing the draft deck from Copenhagen, which was a green Jin Urso deck with 2 reinforcement walkers.
Yeah.
Pretty rude.
Yeah.
Pretty rude. Nice. So some more new players coming in.
So what have you been up to, Adam?
I have not been playing that much since last week, or actually I have. Scratch that. I've been not been able to play like with the new cards since I started opening my boxes today, actually. And as you guys already know, and some people in the Discord, I pulled the Grievous Showcase. And I started with a 5 legendary box. So I've already have a full set of Grievous. So that's nice.
The
legendary, the legendary Grievous 3.
That's really nice.
That's amazing.
2 now. There's 2 of them, and like 2 Aylas. So I think I'm hitting the legendaries I want. I still have a Cad and an Ahsoka as well. Now I just need to luck in some Kirai Mundi and then the third of them, and then like just stop open. And other than that, been doing like some testing for the Monatoshi event. It's quite hard to actually know what's going to be there and what you should test about, since there is no Boba anymore. I'm glad that I did my first testing with not testing against Boba, because I was like, let's have fun first, and then like test against Boba when crunch times come. Otherwise you just switch to Boba. That was gonna be my philosophy. And then he got suspended, and I was like, good, no time wasted. So
but remind me, when's the event again? Is the 30th or
30 or 30?
It's the last weekend of November anyway.
Yeah, the 30th. There is not a 31st November, so
but that's kind of early already preparing.
Yeah, it's a really early tournament, which makes it more interesting to deck build right now, because you have a goal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people I know would be deck building anyway, but at least I have a goal with my deck building right now.
Yeah. Like, if there was nothing until after Christmas, I would feel like maybe just look at something that is fun, right? And build something. Yeah. Like, I really enjoyed my Rex pre-release deck. Like, maybe build something like that and tweak around with that.
Oh, I have to say, I actually played a double green Rex. Ooh. That was so cool.
Yeah.
Because they used a new base that spawns troopers.
Ooh.
And the Rex creates a trooper as well. So they suddenly played Gore with Exploit 4 or Exploit 3, I don't know. I was like, what the heck?
That's cool. I pulled a Gore before, Exploit 3, Sentinel Ambush Overwhelm. Yeah, that's cool. So that's probably what I would have done, but now there is a purpose, and there is actually like, I know there is a bit like talk about having a tournament even in Växjö the weekend after, so the 7th of December. So I have even more to prep for. Maybe I'll bring the same deck, or maybe I'm prepping 2, depending on like, it's fun to play with some new cards.
For sure.
There is like some decks I'm you're theory crafting and you look at it, it's like 2 new cards or something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But enough about that. Let's talk about the big elephant. We are of course a little bit late on this. It's almost a week ago the news arrived. So most things have been said in a way. But I think we should it would be foolish not to address it. Boba is suspended. What's your not first reactions, but now reasonable reactions, right?
A week after reactions.
Yeah. Still happy?
Yes, I think it's fun to see a lot of what you would maybe consider mid-rangey decks have more of a chance. Because with Boba being the previous king of mid-range, you kind of either had to go super aggro like Sabine and take your 50-50, or go for the hard control decks that kind of countered him.
Yeah.
At least in set 1, in set 2 it was a different story. But now you can actually play something like a Luke Skywalker or another cool mid-range leader that doesn't have to
compete with Boba. Yeah. You, Victor?
Yeah, no, I'm really happy that they did something. Like I've said before, I think to show that they care enough to listen to the players, that's really a huge thing. Like a company being this responsive to their play base, that's huge. Me personally, I'm not. I didn't have so much a problem with Boba being dominant. I thought the decks were different and all that, but there were so many people that were having a problem with it that something had to happen, and this is a thing. And it really feels, because there's for good or bad, it really makes the meta completely open right now. I do not know what to expect at all. Like everything goes right now, and that's fun. That's scary, but it's fun. Like when I started testing with proxies of the new cards and trying to theory craft and started testing with friends, well, we had the gauntlet. It was like, could it survive Sabine and Boba?
Yeah.
That was basically what we were trying, and then maybe we would start testing it into Kira and
Bosk. Or
Bosk.
something.
Yeah, hand 2 blue,
Yep.
And now there's nothing, because even Sabine is up in the air. What does Sabine look like in the meta without Boba gatekeeping all the other mid-range decks? Like we've seen 2 sets where it starts out with hyper aggro and then it moves more into Boba mid-range, and then maybe control.
Then it stops.
And then maybe control.
Yeah.
For this cycle, the mid-range is open right away in a way that it really wasn't last set. So it's just, I don't know what to expect, and that's super fun. A little bit scary.
Yeah. Could still be that aggro goes out smashing in the beginning, like that is a tradition of cycle in many card games. So don't be too alarmed if that happens. But I think, as you said, he was the king of mid-range, especially in set 2. I think in set 1 there was a little bit more, like Han Green, I would say, was the king of mid-range in a way in that set, and you could play different things. But since Boba's armor arrived, there was no competition. Like no mid-range leader could actually amass that power that Boba could in the mid-range. So if you wanted to play a mid-range deck, you had to play it more or less, or just decrease your chances of winning to have a little bit more fun because you like the playstyle. Now it's going to be very interesting to see, like as you said before, you could just start testing your decks if you wanted against Sabine and Boba, and if they are too bad, you can just scratch them. Now you don't. I assume Sabine is going to be a good starting point to test against. Sure. I think people will still play her. Like they will make changes. like maybe adding Ayla Secura as I have done and stuff like that. Colonel Yularen is pretty good, but I think my opinion is like it's pretty healthy that they did a suspension on Boba in a way, even if I personally didn't have a problem. But it feels a little bit more fun going into deck building now, knowing that you don't have to consider building a deck with Boba first. Especially when you're going to a tournament.
And I kind of, I don't know, I kind of just felt like this extra interest of just exploring new stuff, because also it being kind of off season right now, and just getting back to the game, new cards. So like one of my first decks that I built was actually inspired by Facit, a hunter deck.
that one looked so fun.
Yeah, and I knew like hunter 7 cost deploying as a 5/8, an ability that conditionally kind of gives you card advantage. It's not gonna be the most competitive, but still, just figuring out how can we build this, how can I gain value from it, does it work? And I tested it. I played against a bunch of random stuff, and it actually performed decent.
Yeah, it was way better than I thought it was gonna be. That's for sure. So like we don't know. The meta might settle again, and will only be like 4 decks in the top again.
Yeah,
that happens. But at least we don't know which ones.
Exactly. I don't think we should expect the meta to be the kind of open that you're looking at it before things settle. That would be highly unlikely. That's not what card games look like.
No,
ever.
Someone takes the other's place.
There's going to be a few top decks. That's always the case, no matter what game you're looking at. And if you're expecting a card game to behave differently, I don't know. Yeah, that's unreasonable.
You're gonna have popularity bias as well, right? People start jumping on trends.
Yeah. Like Pontus said when he was on the podcast, that's a huge part of why Boba was what he was. He was strong and overpowered, but the popularity bias was a huge part of it as well.
Yeah.
So basically we are all still pretty happy about it, and right now we haven't seen any issues, right? We were all happy just discovering the decks, and there is going to be big tournaments in Birmingham and in Skövde, of course, in the end of November. And
there's a couple of there are a couple of American tournaments coming up now as well. These weekends, 1Ks and 2Ks, I think.
So we are going to get some indicators of what people actually initially thinks is going to be good. Right? You don't, and then people will react to it, maybe counter it, and we will have an ebb and flow basically for probably the first weeks of decks.
Yeah. So Birmingham is already next weekend, right?
Is it already next weekend? I thought it was
23rd.
Oh, that's true. It's 23rd. Yeah, I could not go because that's my brother's birthday. That's why it was ruled out. Okay, that's going to be interesting to see. All right. So we can leave the Boba discussion here a bit. Everyone else have discussed it to death anyway. He's suspended, and we are okay with it. Even happy.
Well, I'd say more than okay. Yeah. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. So deck building, right? Victor, your thoughts. Let's go.
The pitch here would be that I think most people intuitively can find synergies between cards and if you like these kinds of card games, at least at some points you're going to look at the cards and see these 2 cards would be busted if you do it like this or something like that. And then you build your deck and you take it to your locals, and it's not as good as the deck that you net decked or saw that incredible deck tech video, even though your combo doesn't seem less strong than the combos you would find in these deck tech videos or whatever. So what I would like us to sort of have a discussion about here is, what's the difference? Why aren't everyone just building busted decks as soon as they find these cool combos? What makes how do you become a good deck builder, and what's the process? What does the process look like from 0 to 60 cards? Because you got 10 in the sideboard as well, and winning a tournament.
It's an interesting topic. I think you kind of can point on many factors. I think one thing that's always going to speak to the quality of a deck is if you, as the deck builder, have a pretty good sense of what cards are good on their own and what cards aren't. Because yes, a deck is about synergies and combos, as you said, but you can't always rely on that. You also need the cards to be good themselves. So, for instance, if you are a deck, if you're playing with a deck that really needs to trade your turn one play, like you need that tempo, you're playing a control style, you can't let, for instance, Sabine run away with getting a 2-for-1, then you should probably play 2 costs that have 3 power.
Right.
Like small things like that, and just when you're starting adding units, being able to kind of think, okay, Village Protector, that's a great card, but this other 3 cost, that's just a 3/3. Why am I putting this in the deck? So I think on one kind of fundamental level, just being able to judge is a card good or not is a quality that's going to help you come a far way. But it's not going to get you all the way, because you can't just take a leader and another color and put in all of the quote-unquote best, strongest cards in that color and expect the deck to perform wildly. You also need to consider, what leader am I playing and how can I utilize this leader? But I think you actually can come very far with just adding the best cards.
Yeah, it worked before.
I think that you're touching on 2 ends of a spectrum there, really. Like, you've got individual cards which are efficient, and then you've got combinations of cards that usually, when combined, performs even more efficiently. And since they are reliant on more cards than one, they are less likely to go off. So you need to balance your deck. So there are often you can hear the term good stuff decks. Yeah. So these would be decks that rely more on individually strong cards. And then you got, on the other end of the spectrum, you would have something called tribal decks, which would be decks where all cards more or less synergize. Yeah. Usually through a trait or something, but you have a strong internal synergy within cards, and most decks are on a spectrum between those 2 things. Yeah. But I think that depends on what you started with. What was your initial idea for the deck? You talked about, like, you just pick a deck and a base. You mentioned sometimes you pick a color and a leader, and then you start throwing cards in there. So you're much approaching it then not from a set, like a combination of cards or anything. You're approaching it just from the good stuff side of the things, and then you will find synergies. Whereas I think often a lot of decks would start in the other end, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to combine these 2 things? Yeah. All right, so what kind of deck would that synergize with more broadly? And you would start adding cards to support that concept that you're trying to build around. Yeah. So I think there are many ways, but all of it has one thing in common. It's all part of the theory crafting portion of deck building. Like, I don't know anyone that's that good at theory crafting that they can just build a deck and go down and it will be a strong deck. Maybe they are busted at playing it, at anything, but a regular person couldn't just take that deck and perform well with, because there's so much more to building a deck than just the theory crafting part of it, right?
Yeah, so basically, like, to make an example of what you were talking about, like something like that I ranted about like a few weeks ago. Now there is 2 of them. That is like a concept, right? That you might be starting like, and then you start looking at which cards do I pair to get the busted combo, and then you look at the leader to combine it with, right? So and that could, like, and if you start with the leader, you might miss because then you are, like, say you start with a blue leader and then you get the yellow color, right? Then you're missing that you're looking for the red and greens cards if you started in that ending. You could potentially.
So that would be more on the tribal spectrum, especially since that card actually needs you to have a lot of the same trait. So I think but it's still theory crafting. At least I've never encountered a theory crafted deck that was, finished.
And I think you are touching upon a very important thing when it comes to what can kind of differentiate good decks from the great decks we've seen in the meta. And that's, do they have something broken?
Yes.
Like, if you're just playing a completely fair game of Stars Unlimited, you're just playing units, like playing normal cards, not really having any real power plays, it might not.
You will not make the top cut
with the decks like Boba was, because it could do so many broken things. So looking at the combos you have available and seeing, like, how can I get these huge swings? How can I maybe resource cheat a little bit with now there's 2 of them, or in Yoda with You're My Only Hope, things like that. That could be a really
DJ
good
tech.
extend DJ tech. That could be a really good way of, like, starting for a deck idea. But the thing you mentioned with, like, just good cards and more tribal focus, I think the game in general, since we don't have that many cards yet, it's more towards the side of good cards.
For sure.
A lot of, when you look at a lot of aspect combinations, you kind of see the same shell, right? If you look at, for instance, red and blue heroism, you often see Kanan, Yoda, K2. That's just because they're valuable cards. They're 2-for-1s. They're nice. You don't see that many Consular Security Forces 4-cost 3/7, right?
No, right.
It's like, why would you play that when you can play Kanan? It's a little bit about knowing what these good cards are, but also finding how can you exploit it even more and get the big power plays that can give you an advantage to win the game.
And I think the thing that you're talking about now, how you do that, for me, I call that step balancing, and I cannot do that at the theory crafting part, because then I'm so focused on just what synergies and what strong cards could be put into the deck. I need to start testing to get the balancing right, and that's like, how much do I need of a couple of combos or lines, really, because I'm thinking about it more of a line of play, like this card into that card into that card, or action. So when you start testing the theory crafted deck, you start seeing which of the lines that you have thought of actually performs and how the lines start synergizing. Okay, so sure, the DJ Tech combo does this thing. I knew that. But when is it interesting to do that? And if you're playing, if you're realizing that it's not really interesting to do that until the 4th turn in a hand deck, well, then maybe you don't need the tech combo. You could just go mono yellow and do it at the 4th turn. So finding these, like, how does these theories of the deck apply in real life? And this isn't the tuning part of a deck. This isn't fine tuning it. This is just making what was a brand new idea into such a shell that you were talking about. Finding the parts that are actually balancing the deck. That's why I call it balancing. And then there will be a couple of slots left. Like the balance of a deck is usually something like 40 cards or even less. And then you have more things that you can tune to specific play styles and things. But finding that shell,
Yeah, like usually when I start just building a deck and slams in the cards, there is usually like around 70 to 80 cards. And that you kind of need to. Some of them, when you're looking at the 80 card pool, you realize these are not close enough, so you can start moving away them for a bit, and then you start actually testing: is this card performing well? No, take it out and put it in a next card, and that's how you realize which card is good in the balancing tower. Because for me, maybe let's say if I think that let's say the new Grievous, right, is going to be OP. He has 4/4 stat line. I need, like, he sounds OP. I need to try it, but then because he sounds like really good, then no, the 3/4 Magma Guard is actually better because it has Sentinel, for example. But in my head, my theory, like 4/4 is just better because I can trade up and down all the ways. But you need to test that, and for you, as you said, balance it, because you have a limited spots for 3. You cannot just have all the best 3 drops, because then your deck is unbalanced and you can't have any top end.
Yeah. And that's the difference between a strong card and a strong line, because Grievous is going to be a strong card, but does it facilitate a line in your deck, a line of play? Like, I play it on 3, and then when it untaps, I attack these kinds of units. What do you do with it? How do you, and what other cards are you going to use together with it? And when you start seeing the lines of play, you start seeing that maybe some of the lines of play aren't necessary.
Yeah.
So you can start removing, because my decks are also up towards 80 cards, you know, and you start, all right, so this line of play isn't really, I mean, it might be strong, but it's not what I'm mostly going to go for with this deck anyway. And when you test, like, for balance, win or lose is just not interesting. I don't care whether or not I win or lose. I'm just finding the play lines. I can this kind of testing you could even do on something like against an AI or something, you know. This kind of testing doesn't, you can do it, play Goldfish, you could play against yourself a little bit, because you're just finding lines of play.
Yeah, you can just sit at your table and draw your first hands, put down, and like, hey, how could this look like? No, this doesn't look that strong. Like,
yeah, Goldfish, for those who doesn't know, it's when you basically have 2 decks and you play against yourself. That's a Goldfish play. You pretend that you don't remember what you had in the other hand, and you play. That's why it's called Goldfish.
Yeah, it's very hard to do.
It's impossible, but it actually works at this stage of deck building.
Yeah, especially the first few rounds.
Yeah, and deck building, it kind of relates to something we've talked about earlier about having some assumptions on the meta, because when I mentioned earlier, you kind of know approximately what cards are good. You would rather play Kanan than the 3/7 Consular Security Force, but that's with your assumptions about what units Kanan might trade into really well. If suddenly the meta changes and there's a new unit that's very popular, which is let's say a 5/3, then suddenly your Consular Security Force would trade really well into it. So these things might also change, and it also brings me from the shell of good cards towards the leader that probably often really impacts what cards you can actually utilize.
And for sure, you can definitely start with the leader. Sometimes you'd even find the main synergies of a deck in the leader. That's very common. Like if you're thinking about a leader like Shuret, you wouldn't just pick him into a deck without an idea. Like he's pretty weak if you're not exactly looking for a specific thing, right? He's part of the main idea about the deck. Like back when I did play Shuret in set 1, the whole idea was to make force throw work, really. So people were looking at what kind of deck would make force throw work, and having a leader that's flipping early and sticks around long enough to be able to play the force throw was why Shuret rose to prominence for a short while in set 1.
Yeah, and there are multiple leaders like that in this set, right? Not just the set. In these 3 sets, you have like for example Ray that utilizes your units to be high HP and low damage, for example. And if you want to have such a package in another deck, it would suck because they trade awful. So obviously, if you want to, like when you see Ray, she gives you lines, right? She tells you this. You need to do this, otherwise I am going to suck even harder. It's going to be real bad if you don't follow my guidance, basically.
And and it changes your kind of estimation of how good cards are. Suddenly R2D2 is a 2/5.
Yeah. So, like, and
which is a lot better than
a lot better.
1/4.
Yes. Because most of the times you only play R2 alone in a round anyway. So getting in for 2/5 instead of 1/4 is just busted.
No, yeah. So these are the things that you really want to look at this point. And I think you should start testing your deck quite early. Like, don't spend too much time theory crafting. It's fun, but get it to a table somewhere, somehow, quite early in the process. And just look at the thing you theory crafted. That's your first draft, really. Yeah. If even. It's the synopsis, really. And then you start working with creating a shell around it. And like for me, I usually skip this part of it. Like in an early meta like now, I love doing it. But in the end, I most likely will pull a complete shell someone else has created and start with the next step after balancing your deck, after finding a shell of cards that synergize well enough and can do a little bit of everything. Well, not really. It should be doing something good. Like that's also a thing. I think if you look at a good combo, if it's not accomplishing a specific goal, that's also something I think could make people improve a lot on deck building, like understanding what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah,
like if you are doing the tech DJ combo and actually stealing that resource, it's not that good because like when you kill DJ you get it back, right? That's why nobody plays it except on one.
Exactly,
because he can destroy that resource. So you have to realize why it's good and how you make it good. And if it's not good enough, drop it because it's not worth wasting cards. Then you can just play strong cards that Jonah talked about before.
But I think the DJ combo is really a perfect example because on its own, it's not accomplishing anything that will win you the game.
Yep.
You have to understand, why do I want to steal a resource and make it my own? So there's really two goals, right? So if you can do it early enough, you can hamper your opponent. It's really a kind of a choke strategy. You're choking their resources and they delaying their, most importantly, if you can delay their flip turn. Like if you can delay Sabine's flip turn, then you win. Sabine will not be able to win if she doesn't flip on 4. So being able to pull the DJ tech combo just before Sabine flips is one of the reasons why this is interesting in a deck. The other reason is obviously that you ramp. You get more resources. But then you need to have cards in your deck that can utilize those resources. If your deck is like focused on the 5 drops and the 6 drops, why would you be interested in stealing resources? That's just not interesting to your deck then. You need to have a deck that's interested in the 7 and maybe 8 drop units. And then you need to have other cards that help you stabilize and get there. Even though you're ramping, you need to get there, right? So understanding the idea behind the deck and having lines of play that all strive towards a common goal, that is the balancing. Like trying to balance the way you win, like the path to your victory. That's what you're trying to balance.
And I think you teased it a bit, like the last phase when you're maybe preparing for a tournament, really tweaking for a specific meta. Also a topic we've discussed before.
Yeah, this has been mentioned.
That part is actually not that important to do right now, I would say.
No.
I think it's really fun just having deck ideas, making them into reality, trying to see how they work. And once you find something you really like you have a deck, it plays nice, and you want to start make it the best it can be for instance, a tournament, then you get into the nitty-gritties, testing specific matchups and all of that. But right now, in the time we're in, I would say you don't need to bother about that stuff.
Unless you are going to a tournament soon.
Unless you have them and you want to prepare 2.5 weeks in advance.
No, but I think
like you
you're,
didn't before Malmö.
I think you're right
Guilty.
about a couple of the things here, because I think what's enjoyable about this stage of a set is these two first parts, and these parts are where you find new ideas, where new decks come from.
Yeah.
The tuning doesn't make a new deck; it makes a deck work for
The
you.
best it can be.
Yeah.
Exactly, work
Perfection.
for you and work for the meta. Those are the two targets of tuning. Tune it to your playstyle, tune it to the meta.
And I would also like to say here in this, like, there are players that aren't that good at building decks, but love playing the game. There is nothing wrong if you don't like building decks or are bad to copy someone and then tune it. That is completely fine. I am, like, compared to my skill level in playing, building is way off. Like, I have to put down so much more like hours on the building if I have to build something from scratch, like compared to someone that is really, really good at like building decks. So I'm like, without help from others, like input or like someone else posting like a shell, I am very like far behind in the beginning. And like, I'm more interested in playing than like finding the cool thing. I was like, here's the cool thing, let me exploit it. Like that thank you for finding it for me. And these, like, don't, like, just because we find it funny to build decks now, you're not forced to. Just copy something and fine tune it if that's what you like.
Yeah. But also, kind of to be a little bit of devil's advocate, if you think you're bad at deck building, you only like net decking, still I would encourage you to have fun with it. It doesn't have to be you're supposed to discover the new best competitive deck that's gonna break the meta and everything. Just in the process of finding something cool you're interested in, seeing if you can make a fun deck out of it, maybe just bringing to locals when there's not that much at stake.
Especially like for weekly play or like casual play, like that's always fun to play something that you made sometimes.
Yeah. And I think we're missing a huge part of it for me. For me, deck building is not something I do. It's something I do together with other people. And that's why I brought up the testing part, because I don't build decks. I'm on my own. We're a bunch of friends that build decks together. We build them, we theory craft together in a car or somewhere. It's like, whoa, yeah, but this card with that card, and then we start theory crafting. And then we go home and we start working on it together, often sending pictures of decks back and forth, and then we start testing, and this is a collaborative effort for me, and I'm not even close to the good at it, but I hang out with people that are pretty good at it, and together we build things, and it's really, really fun to be part of it. It's like being a kid and building your Legos, you know.
And that is fun.
It is.
So yeah, like, deck building is supposed to be fun, right? So if it's not, then take a break.
yeah, for sure, definitely. And net decking, for me, that's just part of the collaborative part of it.
And the inspiration is super important.
Yes.
Yeah, like if you find a deck online that you like, what could make it even more fun? Well, talk to the guy that built it. Like if you and the person that made the deck actually talk about how he plays it or she plays it and how you want to play it, and you start talking about what would personally, like if you get to talk to the person that has had these thoughts, it gets even better. So just don't. Sometimes you talk about stealing a deck online. That's super weird for me.
Yeah.
Like why?
Since it's shared.
Yeah, exactly. Someone put it there. It's not stealing if they gave it to you.
Yeah.
And at least when I share a deck, I want people to talk to me about it.
And like you if you're a creator of something, you think it's good, you want other people to take it and also do good with it, because that like boosts your own ego. Like it gives you motivation to like see like that you do something good and like that you put something out to the community, right?
Okay, guys, I'm seeing we have a couple of minutes left. Could we maybe talk about some concrete decks?
Yes,
for sure,
absolutely. Like,
because
Jonah, you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's just been so fun revisiting old leaders, and of course seeing the new leaders and see how you can build about them. But there's been two big changes, right? First of all, 250 new cards, but also Boba gone. So I mentioned it briefly, but something like a Luke Skywalker. Luke was, I think he was pretty cool in set 1, but
I won a store showdown.
Yeah, right? He had some power, but for some reason he kind of disappeared in the meta, and I think having a not so good matchup into Boba maybe was one of the reasons.
I'm not sure what it was actually. Just people didn't play it. I never tested against it in set 2.
Also had a very tough time against hard control.
Yeah.
That was like impossible.
Yes.
It was a mid-range deck, but it was a kind of slow mid-range deck. I think it could usually slog pretty well in set 1 with Boba.
Yeah.
And I think it probably could have slogged very well with Boba in set 2. But for some reason, that's not where people went in set 2 with it.
I think it also had, like in set 1, just if we're on Luke Green for some reason talking about set 1, but it was so good into Han Green. That deck fell off, so you lost one of your best matchups. Like, it's pretty good into Boba because you could shield, and Boba hates shields, but it could also just get steamrolled. It was like this.
Tempo thing.
I just think there probably was more to it back then.
Probably.
But I think it has got a lot of new cards that would be interesting. Like General's Blade. This deck already wanted to have alternative ramp styles. General's Blade in a deck that already plays a lot of Jedis and has a Jedi leader.
It's pretty cool,
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we have a new combo now with Barris of Fee.
Right.
She's 1 cost, that's a Force unit. So you... Oh, no, it has to be a Jedi, actually, for General's Blade. And she's also
General's
a Jedi.
Blade, yes.
Yeah, but
she has quite some synergy in this deck anyway, because this deck is one of few decks that are actually interested in keeping a lot of their units alive. So this is a deck that could run Rey unit, which heals. Yeah. And with Barris Offie, there could be some interesting things happening here.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think of actually getting some value from that healing ability. It could happen, but
it could happen.
The fact that you can play her, shield her, and then play either the Jedi lightsaber or General's Blade, turn 2, I think is a pretty cool line.
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can argue, okay, she's still then just a 4/4, why don't just play Grievous? But you can also put the lightsaber on R2-D2, for instance.
Yeah. Right. And we all know how much R2 likes his lightsabers. I've done that plenty.
Have you tested this Luke Green a bit?
I've tested 2 versions.
Yep.
So first, I saw the new upgrade called Strategic Acumen, which basically gives the ability of an Alliance Dispatcher being able to exhaust and play units from your hand at cost 1 less as an upgrade. So I thought, okay, Alliance Dispatcher is what made Luke Green great. Yes. So now we can basically double the amount. So first I focused on that route, didn't test it much, and then I moved on to the one I mentioned previously, 3 General's Blade, 3 Jedi Lightsaber, hopefully draw it and just slam it on your turn 1 play.
And I think Luke would probably benefit a lot from Timely Intervention. I think that makes his deck a lot better. And I think with Timely Intervention and Ayla, you could be interested in ECL. The old Luke's decks from set 1 usually played the 30 base.
Yes.
Whereas I think with Ayla and some of the other things that you play now, you could actually be interested in ECL.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, in that case, it's all gonna be down to the Sabine matchup. Do you need a 5 HP or not?
Yeah.
Right.
It's often the difference maker.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you
sure.
any specific deck, Victor?
I have so many decks right now.
I'm gonna make you pick one.
All right. Well, I'm still obviously not gonna just put Sabine on the corner. Nobody puts Sabine on the corner. In the corner. But I'm testing a lot of different things now, and a lot of Quinlan Voss. And I've been testing Quinlan Voss Green and Quinlan Voss Mono Yellow are the ones that I like the best right now. The Mono Yellow is less stable, but can afford a lot of more speed. So it's kind of a tempo switch deck. So you start by a very controlly route. You use ambush units to keep the board clean, and then at his flip turn, you switch. Maybe even before that, but you want to draw into your cunnings and your boost events really at that point, and you start hammering base and try to win pretty quickly. I think the Quinlan Green has performed slightly better, just because home 1 is busted. So
what's the argument of playing Quinlan then? If you're
you get to home 1. Quinlan can control pretty well with the ping and different units. You can keep board light.
And you also get to play now. There's 2 of them efficiently, right?
I don't play it in the green one.
I would think Plo Koon and Ayla would be good targets. Interesting.
The Plo Koon is you'd think, but Plo Koon is pretty useless. If you like, he's a 5, so if you want to get maximum for it, you want to play him on turn 2. Yeah.
Yes.
But you can
and then
only
he kills basically the most people anyway, right?
Yeah. So that's the only window where he really works with that, because if you use it any later in the game, well, he doesn't have coordinate by default from having. You can't play another 2 if you get coordinate from it. So it's kind of a anti-synergy in a way there. And the window to play Plo Koon with now there's 2 is so small. So you need to have other units that you'd rather play. So that would be Ayla, I guess. But she doesn't have inherent ambush.
No, she's just a power unit on turn 2, right?
Exactly. So that's it feels like it's too little of a combo, maybe. If you don't like, it's a great combo if you have excellent 7 drops that you can play from Quinlan. If you can go from Quinlan into a 7 drop, so maybe Quinlan Blue. I think Quinlan Blue has probably legs. That would be interesting. That deck would probably play now there are 2 of us. But I don't think the Quinlan Green are as interested in it.
Yeah. Can I steal your 7 drop as a segue?
Sure, go for it.
Because the 7 drop is why I've also been really interested in Heroism Cunning, the new Enfys Nest.
Yeah.
I think she's so good. So I've been looking at Han Yellow, the old one, and Han Green, the old one, because 7 drops works pretty good in that deck. And
solid.
Boba Daimyo.
Yeah. I think those are interesting decks.
He pairs also pretty good with yellow because all the ambush, he can give +1.
But Boba Green flips on 6, right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't do the now there are two of us as well as you would do with Han.
Yeah. But I don't really play now there's two of them actually in those decks.
All right. Okay.
It's just about Ethis being so good.
Yeah, okay. but I think you could do an Underworld now there are two of them deck with Han probably.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I will finish up here with the deck. One of the decks I've been testing, and it's gonna be like someone that I'm a little bit disappointed about. Like I tested a lot against and a sum with Maul, the leader Maul. His ability is shit. Like it does nothing. Like when I face someone, like it really only helped when someone had Maul, the unit on board, and he hits for 2 and you got overwhelmed and one of them was kind of weak. But it was like, sure, I got 2 damage on my base. Like, so? It wasn't really that big. Like, Maul himself, when he came out, like 6/6, pretty strong. Like, that is solid. But since his ability was so bad, it felt like just like a weak Anakin.
Yeah.
Like a very weak Anakin, because his ability was like Anakin's ability is pretty relevant. And
often has better stats.
Yes, and Maul's was surprisingly sad. So that's what I'm going to say. Like Maul was surprisingly sad. I thought, and maybe it still will be the go-to green-red leader for villain side, but because he can like get the force throw easily off and stuff like that. But I had hoped he would be stronger.
Yeah, I tested a lot with him in the beginning. That was my first attempt, Maul Green. And obviously this was when Boba was still the gatekeeper. And we tested a lot into those things. And my conclusion was that there's nothing there right now. That I can't build anything that's going to perform well enough. I think eventually there will be something there, because I do think overwhelm is a really strong keyword, but we don't have the unit support for it right now, I don't think.
Yeah, you kind of need to play. You kind of want the opposite of Rey, like
1
HP guys with high damage output.
Exactly.
But I don't think the game has that many of those that are great.
There are a few. Like you got Death Star Stormtroopers, you got the new guys on a kind of like robots on a bicycle, B something.
3 cost 5 too.
Yeah, so there are some, and you have the Starwing 4-1 space that draws you cards. So there are a couple of units that synergize with the strategy, but they're not enough, and I don't think he...
And they are so easily killed by the opponent if you're not going first.
Exactly. And since you can't use the ability on the leader side until... Like, you can't use it on an ambush or something. It has to be something that is in play that you can...
Yeah, you cannot ambush with ECL or something.
No, that's just when he flips. So when I tried to build him in green, I went for hyper ramp, because it's basically when he's deployed, things happen. And hyper ramp, I just couldn't stabilize it.
No, that's tough. I think, as you said, maybe there is, like, if Overwhelm gets better, more units like that, he could be something. But right now, he has one of the cooler showcases, people think. So I hope someone finds a solid like list, like a Boss Green, like Vader Green. Yeah,
exactly. I think
that he could reach that level, but I'm not sure.
I think he could inherit the Boss Green deck, basically.
At the moment, I might actually think that Boss Green is just better, because you can play the bounties and double claim.
Maybe.
If someone finds a really, really good and have tested, please contact me. I want to try against it, but So, you guys have any final thoughts, or are we wrapping up this deck building discussion?
Yeah, we haven't mentioned that or I didn't mention any new leaders. So I would just say like, cool to see Django now having a place with Boba gone. So a lot of people building it in the space red shell with Tarkin Town. Looks
Honestly,
cool.
I think he would have had a place even with Boba. I think the tap is actually the way he taps. The Django red deck could probably had legs into any Boba deck, I think.
Interesting.
Maybe, yeah. And like, but just any yellow villain leader, right?
Yeah.
Like
So strong.
Asajj, people are going to start experimenting. It was no point doing that with Boba.
And we've
I
also
even
mentioned
heard people
Anakin, Yoda, really a lot of cool
Yeah.
things you could.
I've heard people starting to messing around with Afra even. And like that makes me so happy.
Reanimator.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me so happy.
All right.
Thank you for joining me this evening, guys. And
Yeah,
I guess we
great.
yeah, good. You've been good too, Victor. It's been okay.
Yeah.
No.
I feel good.
Thanks,
On the spot.
Daddy Adam.
Yeah.
Mama Moose Stout. That's what I was looking
Yeah.
for.
Exactly. All right. So in Jason's absence, I'm saying good night and see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.